The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Quirky Dog Podcast, inspired by some of the quirkiest dogs you can ever imagine and the owners who love them. This podcast is brought to you by the quirky couple themselves, Scott and Jess Williams. Their aim is to educate and entertain. Here's Scott and Jess.
Welcome, guys, and welcome to the Quirky Dog Podcast. What are we going to be talking about today, Lovebug?
Well, we're going to talk about working dogs and what it's like to own and live with a working dog.
Yes.
And the joys of that.
And maybe some of the drawbacks of that. I wanted to do, so you want to own a Border Collie and a Malinois, but Scott wanted to extend it to all working dogs. But first, we're going to start with the quirky tip of the day.
I'll make sure that's right side up.
Good job. So the quirky tip of the day.
I was thinking, maybe we shouldn't be talking to them. Maybe we should talk to each other.
We talk to each other.
Let them eavesdrop on our conversation. Notice my body language turning towards you, open,
good job
lovingly.
With your NLP. Scott and I spend more time together than any two people, I think, in the entire world, like at any time. So it's nice to be able to talk away from you
and
towards them.
And the bond just grows stronger.
It is. All right, our quirky tip is not that we're going to ignore you and talk to each other, but if you need to run a fecal for your dog at the vet, if something's happening, a little loose stool, something looks a little silly, a little bit of slime or whatever in the poop,
pieces of toys.
Well, yeah, you may run a fecal for that, or that was just an accident. Your dog ate something. Make sure you tell the vet to run it also for Giardia, because oftentimes those fecals, they just run for worms and everything else, and Giardia could be the main issue. So if you're going to run a fecal and you're concerned about something, make sure you specify that they should also run it for Giardia.
What is
Sometimes
Giardia?
That could be a little bit more.
Is that a serious problem? Is that like
it's a bug in the tummy.
Is that like parvo?
It's a tummy bug. It's not like parvo. It's not as bad as parvo, but it does need to be treated with medication. And side note, as a quirky tip, if you're Jess, the way you like to treat it is with Panicure and metronidazole.
Well, that's more of a puppy issue anyway, isn't it?
One would hope, but it can extend out. Okay, so we're going to talk about working dogs. So this is really a topic that we're well versed in. How long?
Well, define working dog. What do you?
Yeah, I actually looked at that with Google. So working dogs, they say like police dogs or something sometimes, but the phrase that we're using here is any dog that's bred for a more specific purpose than just to be a pet. So a Brittany Springer Spaniel, a German Shorthaired Pointer, a Border Collie is bred to herd sheep, cattle dogs, any dog that's bred for a specific purpose, which of course all these dogs,
Labrador Retriever.
Yes, all these dogs have different functionalities and everything else. But a working dog for this sense is like you're going to genetics where the dogs are performing at a high level, either doing sports or something else. They're actual working dogs. That's how we're defining it.
Actively seeking out a working dog puppy. Is that what you're trying to say?
Well, sometimes when you go to a purebred breeder, they are producing more working dog type of dogs and not just pet dogs. So it's important to specify. So how long have you owned Mals?
About 20 years.
Yeah, so 20 years.
I've aged about 40.
I've had Border Collies pretty much 30 years now. So, I mean, that's a pretty...
That's not really a working breed, though.
Well, for the definition of this podcast, it is. And a lot of people get excited about a dog that they see in a movie or a dog that they see on Instagram or, a dog that their friend had or whatever else. But really, the breed of the dog that you choose to introduce into your family is very important. And if you want to own an Akita, that's your own prerogative. You get an Akita. What was that breed that guy found on Instagram that he wanted a Turkish something?
Yeah, I can't remember. It was a very unusual breed. It was a Turkish guard dog.
Yeah.
But it was like a 200-pound dog.
And he found the page on Instagram, right? Like he was just like, oh my God, I love this. I think he had a Great Dane. The dog was a previous client, unexpectedly died. He saw this dog on Instagram and he's like, oh my God, I love this thing. I want to have this thing. He called Scott. They're expensive. It's like a $5,000 dog. Yeah. And you worked with some in California, right?
Fortunately, I didn't. I went to the house where they had them. They were like lions in a cage. And he said he can't walk them down the street. They're so big and aggressive and all that stuff. And the price I gave him made him shy away. I was ready to sacrifice my body for a price. But he wasn't willing to pay that price. So.
And if people want to get, that type of breed for their family, that's fine. Like, you guys all can make your own choices, but you should do your research. So the bottom line here, the things that we're going to discuss is living with a dog that's bred for a specific purpose with genetics that, can get to on top of the podiums in whatever given sport that you want to do, that can, run faster at the park than any other dog there. Genetics like that have some stuff packed in with it that sometimes can be more difficult to live with.
Well, if you're going to get a working dog and you're not actively involved in an activity that would help that working dog excel, I don't understand the point. That's the problem. If it doesn't have a venue and an outlet for that drive, then you can wind up with a lot of headaches.
Yeah, no, completely.
That's really what it's all about.
As far as I want to talk about the Brittany Springer Spaniel, because we just had Brittany in, that was a little puppy, really sweet dog. And that dog did have a little more drive than probably some other pet dog Brittany's that we have in. It was a pretty nice little dog. She was very nice, but
one that you could live with.
Yes, but my point with that is I think that she spoke with the breeder about what their expectations were like. She lives in a little condo in Portsmouth, right on the water. She's not going to be going out and hunting with this dog. She had a little bit of anxiety and everything else, but overall, the puppy was really nice when it was with us, and she's developing into a really nice puppy. And it's not that stronger genetics won't develop into a nice puppy. But like Scott said, if they don't have an outlet, you may be kind of banging your head against the wall like, oh my gosh, what did I get myself in for? Cattle dogs, I think, are often misunderstood. Like cattle dogs, Australian cattle dogs, some people call them healers, are bred to herd the cattle, right? Border collies herd the sheep, and then the stronger, like cows and stuff, and the other animals that may kick the dogs, that's when you bring in the cattle dogs. Like, that's the purpose of why this breed was bred. So then when you have kids running around and everything else, and it's nipping at the kids' heels, and it's trying to put everything into a corner, that's because that's genetically why this dog was put on the earth. So rather than be like, oh, this is so weird, these behaviors are so strange, at least know what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah, and I don't understand the whole thing with the guard dogs, the protection-based working dogs, where people are getting them that aren't involved in a working
What do you mean, like a shepherd?
Protection sport.
What are you talking about?
Malinois, some of these...
like the $85,000 protection dogs, or just dogs?
No. Just getting a Malinois, which is reasonably priced. You can get a nice Malinois puppy for $1,000, But they are like, when I first was introduced to them, they used the analogy of like they're a Ferrari. Mm-hmm. It's not a dog. It's not a car you drive every day to work. It's a high-performance vehicle that you need a track to drive it on. And the Malinois is a high-performance dog that needs a certain outlet to perform. And I'm not saying that you can't have a Malinois as a pet, but you need to be a pretty savvy dog handler owner to keep that dog from getting on top of you. Yeah. You need to be on top of the dogs all the time. And quite often, people are getting these dogs, and part of it is the breeders are putting these Malinois, as one example, on Pet Finder and Craigslist. And here's another example. I had a family brought in a German Shepherd that they bought online, an adult, and it was from Illinois, and it was a police dog washout is how it was described.
How did it get into their family?
Beautiful, sable German Shepherd, and the friggin' dog was aggressive as hell. I mean, I took the leash, I started working him, and he was okay with me, but he started looking at me like, if you pop that leash one more time, I'm going to fucking kill you. Like, this is how he was looking at me, right? So I said, okay, sit, come over, take the dog, and bring him over here. So while he's on the other side of the desk from me, the dog then gives me the hard look and lunges over the desk.
I thought this was a Dutch Shepherd.
It was a Shepherd. I think it was a German Shepherd, but it had the dark pigment. And it was a German Shepherd police dog washout, and we don't know what was going on. I don't know if it was the genetics of that dog that made it aggressive, or maybe it was some real hard work that had been put on that dog. But it was very suspicious, and they came because they'd have that kid in the back seat of the car when they're dropping their kid off at kindergarten, and when the lunch lady or whoever it is goes to open the back door to take the kid out, the dog is like protecting the whole car, like it's going to kill somebody.
Yeah, it was intense. You didn't do training with them, right?
No, I told him to take the dog and
that dog
get
actually,
it back where it came from.
That dog actually, I believe, was going to get euthanized at Tufts, and it got loose in the process of getting euthanized.
They had to bring in a SWAT team to get the damn
it
dog.
Literally isn't even a joke. Like, it was a huge to-do. But so that's a huge extreme. But yes, with that said, I 100% agree with what Scott's saying. How did a dog in Illinois that was supposed to be a police dog that turned out to be a washout end up with a family in Massachusetts? Like, that's poor placement. And sometimes it is poor placement. However, a lot of good breeders of Border Collies, Malinois, some of more of these working breeds will exclude certain people just right off the bat. They'll say, oh no, we're not a good match. Like, getting a puppy into the right home is really difficult. But there's gonna be stuff that you see, behaviors that you see from dogs like this that you may not be sure of and that are frankly a pain in the ass to live with. Like, let's talk about the Mal, because Scott has 20 years of experience with the Mal, and I came into this relationship with a Malinois. I had gotten a Malinois. He was a Shih Tzu washout from Texas. I used him for entertainment, and he would high jump 56 inches at the fair. He was a big, look at him go, big police dog. His name was Sarge. Awesome dog. He was a really, really, really nice dog, and he was not our average Mal, I would say.
No, he was very sensitive and very friendly, very social dog.
Very social. I had later in his life, he had a mast cell tumor on his stomach that I wasn't sure what it was. I was able to take him to a vet. I had some connections, and I went to an old farm vet. They were able to take his mast cell tumor out with just a local anesthetic. I didn't even put him under general. I actually fed him cheese while that was happening. So he was very nice and very good about being hands-on and everything else. I have met probably, I'd say, 30 Malinois more intimately since I've been with Scott in the last 10 years. And we do a lot of sports with, the French ring and the protection stuff. And I don't really like the breed. I mean, I'm not trying to throw everybody under the bus, but Sarge was the exception to the rule. Malinois are a lot to live with. We still own one, and we love him dearly. His name is Cousteau. He's French ring too, and he comes from great genetics, and we really, we love him. He'll always be our pet, but I'm not really looking forward to getting another Malinois puppy.
Well, they got to work. That's all. If you're not working them, and I haven't been working my dog for a while, so
even if you are working them, best case scenario, you get the spinning in the crate type of stuff. You could get some reactivity. There's fallout from every little breed, but it's not your average dog to live with. It's not your average dog to deal with. It's not your average dog to go to the vet with, a vacation with, and you just have to know that might be a thing. And I'm not trying to shit on the Mals. They're great dogs.
No, they're great, and but I will say in their defense that there's this umbrella, the Malinois, and it's a pretty big umbrella because they're coming from the Netherlands, from Germany, from France.
And even
they're all bred very specifically for similar biting exercises, but yet one is bred more for sport, one is bred more for police and military, and they have very different temperaments.
And even the show line Mals here in the country
American bred ones.
They look very different than these working Mals, but they're still coming from the Malinois. So
they look similar. They just have smaller feet and they're a little more dainty.
And they still are a lot of dog. I've had them in agility before as clients, and they're a little bit sharper than your average dog. And I would say the German Shepherd, more so than any dog that we may discuss here on this podcast, is probably bred more pet dog-like as far as a working dog.
They've been trying to do that for probably 50 years.
And I think that is, you obviously can still get a really nice working Shepherd, but Scott would say that you'd probably want to go overseas to do that. But that dog, I'm not, if you want a German Shepherd and that's your dog, everything else, just really talk to your breeder. Talk to your breeder. Who are they placing these dogs with? Maybe talk to some other owners that have gotten dogs from this breeder to know their temperament. Go meet some other dogs. But, the German Shepherd, if that's your end-all be-all and that's your breed, I would say we're seeing more of those dogs being in pet homes more successfully than some of these stronger working dogs.
Well, they're bred more primarily for look. Is what I'm seeing with the German Shepherd.
Yeah, in a certain degree.
There's been temperament problems that go along with that.
There's definitely some anxiety, and Scott always jokes that the German Shepherd is the one dog that might work great for us, and then the owner takes a leash, and it just doesn't transfer as well as some other dogs.
Yeah, they size up everyone individually.
Yeah, so you have some stuff going on there. But when we're sitting here talking about these working dogs and these working breeds, I would say the Shepherd has been more of the pet dog-esque quality than, over the past 10 years than some others.
I will say that, in my opinion, the Malinois is probably one of the very few dogs left that still has all the working characteristics that it was bred to be 150 years ago.
Yeah, and maybe that's part of the reason
maybe it was 120 years
that
ago,
I'm maybe more sensitive about preserving it, is that like the more pet homes that are requiring that kind of dog and getting that kind of dog into their home, the more fallout we might have. Okay, let's go to break real quick, and then we're going to talk Border Collies when we get back, because I love my Border Collies.
Does your dog lack self-control? Are you looking for some answers? Would you like your dog to be calmer? Does your dog lack confidence? Canine Mind Shift. Enroll in a free course today. Simply go to caninemindshift.com. That's caninemindshift.com.
Okay, we're back. All right, before we move on from Mal's, I feel like I stole your thunder. Is there anything else you want to talk about with them since you have the 20 years?
I think they're awesome dogs. I think they can be great companions. You just need to be a savvy handler. You need to have some experience. They definitely need some good, firm obedience training. And like most dogs, but with them, they can be dangerous without the good, decent training in them.
That's the thing.
So you don't want a dog that's been bred to bite hard for 100 years, and then treat it like a friggin' poodle. Yeah. You're going to have a problem.
That gets a little bit dangerous. And Scott, from Mal's, he went to Border Collies. You got Jimmy after owning Mal's.
No, I didn't leave Mal's.
You didn't leave Mal's, but you
added to my insanity with a Border Collie.
A Border Collie. And we compare the two breeds quite frequently as far as intelligence, Ferrari type stuff, everything else, although Border Collies don't necessarily bite as hard.
Yeah, Border Collies are a total pain in the ass also.
100%.
They're just not bred to bite. They're bred to herd. They're bred for speed.
And they're a little smaller.
I love Border Collies, but, you know, I got a kind of a misconception about Border Collies based on the one that I got, because I got a performance sport Border Collie, not a real Border Collie in the sense that it's bred to be in Scotland, out in the pouring rain, herding sheep for 15 hours a day. Those type of dogs are a friggin' total pain in the ass to live with. They don't, I don't think, have, and I, only because I've worked with a couple that were put into people's homes, they don't have genetically as much desire to do the obedience with the owner because they want to be out away from you, working and herding.
They're more independent. These dogs, when they're overseas working, they're living outdoors. Like, watch the movie Babe. Love that movie. Great movie. A lot of nice animals. Happy, jolly old man. The dogs are outside in the rain, living outdoors. They're not sleeping in bed with you. So, and I think that Scott specifically gets a false sense of security with Border Collies because we had one that was supposed to be that goose dog, right?
Yeah, we had a bird.
Yeah, but we don't know how.
For a golf course.
It was bred for a golf course,
purchased for a golf course.
I don't know how, what those genetics were, and that might not have been, you know, genetics of dogs that are herding. But Border Collies now, okay, what kind of weird things could they do? They could chase their tail. My one dog eats her toenails. They can do neurotic, crazy stuff where they get all attached to lights and everything else.
Yeah, they start chasing reflections on the ground.
Motion sensitivity. We love Jimmy. Jimmy's, oh my God, he just turned 9. It was his birthday. Jimmy is like, we call him the chew glue. He sleeps in between us every morning. We love the dog. Jimmy Chew, our dog, when I rotate other dogs, is on a bed and there's a toy there that he can grab because he's reactive and motion sensitive when I'm letting dogs out. He wants to spin and bark, so he just stands on his $300 bed and holds his toy and controls his anger that way. But there's drive there. There's a dog there that got a French ring brevet. He's got some push to him. Our dogs have push to them. They might be more vocal. They could be more prone to anxiety because they're more intelligent.
They might slam their nose into your windshield when you turn on the windshield wipers.
That he does that too with his motion sensitivity. But then again, okay, fine. So, oh my God, the dog's so motion sensitive, it's off its rocker. How the hell do you think it gets sheep to move? Like, that's the whole point about motion sensitivity. Like, oh, I got to move them. Okay, now they're here. Oh, I got to move them. It's not just specific to Border Collies. Kelpies, Aussies, all of these dogs have more push. Maybe they have to be rotated individually if you have a pack of dogs. Maybe you have to put some sort of screen in front of your window when you're driving. They're going to have these little idiosyncrasies that you have to deal with, especially if they're bred for a purpose, and other dogs in these lines are working at a high level, whether it be in performance sports like dock diving, frisbee, agility, flyball, or in actual, herding sports and what other kind of things do these dogs that we're talking about do?
Ratters. I was going to say,
ratters.
The biggest
Barn hunt
problem
now.
I see with pet dogs and clients is that they get these working dogs that they don't realize is a working dog.
Yes.
Which can be a Jack Russell,
Oh
these
my God,
little
that
terriers,
is such
these
a good
Yorkies,
example, the Jack Russell.
And they're cute and they're small, and they think, I don't want a big dog, I want a little dog.
I
And
want
it's
a wishbone.
friggin' monster.
Yeah.
It's like a 40-pound or 30-pound monster.
That is so true. I'm so glad we brought up the Jack Russells. And we got a Jag Terrier. Oh my gosh, when Scott was selling bedbug dogs years ago.
Boy, was I stupid.
Well, we got him. We thought it would be good to sell a little bedbug dog, a Jag Terrier. It's JAGD. These dogs are bred to go hog hunting, right? Like we brought it to a Bart Bellin
Bear
seminar,
hunting.
and Bart's joking. He's like, "Oh, you have this dog on the property. There's no other animals on the property
Nothing
when
else
this
is
dog's
alive
here."
if this dog is on the property.
He was a lot of freaking dog, and we rehomed him, and he did some deer trailing for his life and everything else. But he was a lot of dog for us, and his drive with bed bugs would kind of go in and out, and he wasn't necessarily a good dog to pass on for that. But
dogs that are bred to kill small, like rodents, for example, that was what they were bred for. Farm dogs that are going to clear out the grain silo of rats. That's what they were for. They're great at that. And there's even some great videos on YouTube I see once in a while where they're trying to get rats and rodents out of a field, and they're turning over the dirt with a fork. And they got 10 of these little dogs there, and every time a rat is exposed, they just zoom, they're on it, killing it. But then when you walk down the street with a bow in its hair, it wants to friggin' kill everything in sight.
And then when
moving.
it starts to freak out and you pick it up, its complex is, woo, I'm just big man on campus. And yeah, that's true. Terriers are, I don't see it as much as we used to see it, but I'm sure it's still happening. And if you want a Jack Russell or you want a dog like this, just talk to the breeder and don't just buy it online.
Be prepared to do some balance training.
Yeah, that
You're
would be
gonna have a
fine,
little
too.
trouble if you're just out there with your clicker and there's a bunch of chipmunks on the sidewalk.
But the other flip side of that is, even if you're prepared for whatever, people don't really want to become trainers. And I understand that. You guys want to own dogs to have companions.
Well,
and
that's the problem, yeah.
Yeah, that's fine and good. But no matter what you're talking about, plan on dedicating a significant amount of time to training. That's more what you're talking about. And if you get a pet dog, a more pet line bred dog, that doesn't mean that you're not going to train it. But know what you're in for. When you're just buying this dog that you see on Facebook that looks cute, you don't know the genetics. If you're shipping a dog from across the country, you haven't met the parents. Doodles get a bad freaking rap, but they're not necessarily working doodles. I'm not saying they're perfect dogs, but the groomers love the money, and a lot of them are a little bit easier to live with than some of these other breeds. I want to
say with regard to the Jack Russells and some of these little Yorkies and things like that, those working characteristics have been consciously bred out of them, just like the American German Shepherd. So they're trying to make them more of a family companion.
More of a lap dog.
But it's still back there. There's pieces that, in their DNA that will rise to the, if they're don't have some training, all of a sudden, I don't know what happened. All of a sudden, he chased my, 18-month-old across the yard and bit him in the diaper,
Yeah. No, those kind of things can happen. And I want to talk, obviously Rottweilers, Dobermans, there's a lot of working type of dogs. So if you're really well-versed in a breed, that's fine. Just talk to a breeder about what you're doing. But a lot of these hunting dogs, labs, I would say, are more balanced, and they're, a lot of them are more pet dog bred. But like German Shorthaired Pointers, Brittany Springer Spaniels, what's some other big hunting dogs that I'm missing? Setters, a lot of setters, Irish setters specifically. They can be a little bit nutty. They can be wired. Yeah, well, I don't know how many of those are still working, but maybe.
The genetics back in the genetics is stuff
but
there.
As far as if you're going to get a breed like this, these breeds are showing, I would say, more anxiety than some other breeds. And that's because they're bred to work, they're bred to run, they're bred to do these things. So you're going to have to figure out ways to help calm them down, conditioning them to a crate, teaching them to stand up dog bed, getting them to kind of reel themselves in a little bit. But I would say the working dogs like that we've had over the years have been a little bit more high-strung, I guess I would say, as far as the hunting dogs.
Yeah.
Those types of breeds. And again, some of them have been lovely, but talk to, when you get a breed-specific dog from rescue, and there are breed-specific rescues, and they do a lot of good things, at least meet the dog, maybe do a foster type of setup and everything else, because then you're not going to know the parents and be able to go back there. But just have open communication about what your expectations are, where your experience level is. Our dogs didn't just come to us and it was all sign, seal, deliver. We've had learning curves with all of our dogs in different ways, shapes, and forms. I've probably had a stronger learning curve with Scott's daughter's Pomeranian, who has now been our full-on dog for 6 or 7 years, than I have with any dog in my entire life. Like, every dog is a learning opportunity and growth.
That dog was bred to be sitting in your lap, and it's not in your lap enough. Well, that's the problem. It needs to be sitting there.
But if I just have her in my lap for 10 hours, then when I put her in the crate, she poops because she's mad.
She has a lot of character.
Yes, yeah. And that's the thing. And yes, I guess that's a bad example to bring up the Pomeranian as the working dog. But these people that make their dogs look great, these dogs that are achieving at such a high level that seems like, oh my gosh, they just had a unicorn that just came out of the blue and the dog was awesome. I want that. There's a lot of work involved. And yes, some journeys are longer than others, and it doesn't always have to be like, oh my gosh, I'm pulling my hair out. But you have to grow as a person. You have to grow as a trainer if you really want to dedicate your life and your 15 years to strong genetics. Genetics really matter when you get dogs.
Yeah, and if you enjoy working with dogs, then it's no problem getting a working line anything, because your passion is in the working with the dog. So it doesn't matter really what breed you get, as long as you're willing to be working with it on a daily basis.
And reaching out for help.
Getting involved with a club and working with other people that own that same breed so that they can help guide you along and all that stuff.
Yeah, and finding the proper help. I feel like a lot of times we get into this headspace of like, oh, I went on the internet. Oh, I checked out YouTube. Nothing helped. No, nothing can help my dog. Call a professional. If you call a professional and that doesn't work, consult another professional. Join these breed groups on Facebook. Ask around. Ask about these things because, and some people are going to tell you crazy stuff. Like there's certain breeds on Facebook that they say, oh, that dog just can't be crated. Yeah, that's because the anxiety level in that specific breed is so freaking through the roof right now that the dog won't accept the crate. That doesn't mean the dog can't be crated. It means that the anxiety is high, so you have to counteract that in different ways, shapes, and forms. But really, when you're going to introduce a dog into your family, whether it be an adult dog or a puppy or a adolescent dog or anything else, try to do as much research on the front end as possible, because Scott's the first person to say that if a dog doesn't work out for him, he will responsibly place it somewhere else. Like he's not going to put up with bullshit.
Yeah, if I get a puppy and I just don't like the puppy, it's just not working out. I've never dropped a dog off at a rescue, but it's always been easy for me to find a new home because I pay a lot of money for the puppy in the first place.
Yeah, and he's well connected.
Yeah, so I can say, I got this puppy, I just don't like the way this puppy works with me. Take it, see what you think. And I've always been able to find someone that would grab, and thankfully, it hasn't been a lot of puppies, but there's been several that I've just
and Scott's well
felt
connected
the need to, and I always rehome before they get too old. It's just coming up on a year. It's already got training in them. It's just personality-wise, I'm not really feeling it. You know?
And that's for the betterment of the dog and for our lives and everything else. And that's not that we're just adding dogs all the time to turn over. We're very happy with how many dogs we have and what we have and everything else. But these people...
Could I add something to that? I think that some of these dogs I got was because of my own inexperience. I wanted a dog from this particular kennel, and I didn't know enough about the kennel.
The ego,
I didn't. Yeah,
ego got in there.
I see the adult dog, but I don't see what it took to get that dog from 8 weeks to 3 or 4 years old, where it was a great working adult dog. And some of those journeys take a lot more patience than I'm willing to put into a dog. I like a dog that is working pretty quickly with me, enjoying tugging, enjoying wanting to be with me and wanting to work with me. And some dogs are kind of sleepers. Some puppies, it just takes them time to unfold and to develop. And my personality is just hard with that kind of thing.
But even talking in that same vein, Scott is working with the dog. He's trying to develop the dog. He's well connected in the dog world to place the dog responsibly with another owner that will, work with it.
That has more patience or knows the bloodline.
And I was going to say that the problem is a lot of us get a dog for our family, and then the last thing you can possibly think of is placing that dog somewhere else. Like that is completely heartbreaking. Like, this is our family dog. We want this dog. And you don't want to take that leap, but then maybe you didn't do your work on the front end. Or vice versa. A lot of people will call once there has been an incident and say like, oh, I need to rehome this dog. The dog needs a perfect owner that's like really into training and really dog savvy and everything else. Well, you know what, guys? Like, we're those types of people, and we don't want those. We have plenty of dogs in our house. We have plenty of good things going on. The dog-savvy people don't just want everybody else's leftovers. And I'm not trying to say that to be rude. It's just a fact of the matter.
They don't want to take on problems. They've had enough problems in their life, and they're at a point where they want their life to be less problems, not more. And, that brings me, I know we don't have a lot more time left, but pit bulls are another great working breed that too many of them are in homes where people are not training and they're just letting them out on a harness and they're getting into all kinds of trouble.
Yeah.
And I know
or bully mixes.
We have
a ton
several
of rescue
friends
is filled with bully
that are
mixes.
huge pit bull people, and their dogs are great. And, Larry Hansen out in Southern California, I'd like to have her on the podcast sometime, but she's a great pit bull breeder, judge, owner. And she has a zero tolerance for bullshit with pit bulls, and her pit bulls are great.
Yeah, and they're not perpetuating any, animal aggression or human aggression or anything else. Yeah. So these dog people, if you will, are, more in touch with what the dogs need, where the dogs need to go, if the dog's going to work out or not. Pet people, patrons of America, we don't expect everyone to be super savvy, but do your front end research. Talk to the breeders. Get a good feel as far as like, I met the parents. I feel good about the parents. Like, I've talked to some other people that own these dogs in their place. Experience level matters when you're dealing with strong genetics. So if you want a working dog of any way, shape, or form, and every dog in a certain sense is a working dog, no matter what breed you're getting or what mix you're getting or anything else, you need to do your front-end research.
Yeah, do a little research on the breed.
And don't feel bad about reaching out for help or stepping outside the box or, trying something new. If you had 15 dogs in the past and this one is giving you a run for your money, maybe there's a good life learning lesson involved. But please do your research. They're not for everyone. We have multiple Border Collies. We have a Malinois. We have the Pomeranian. We have a lot of dogs with drive. And even for us, it's a freaking lot. You know what I mean? And we're both professional dog trainers.
The funny thing is we're able to handle what we have in our house. And it's so funny when we have people that, pet dog people, they have one dog. And they just can't get a handle on this one dog. And we have at any time, we have 7 crazy friggin' dogs. They're all in their beds. They're chewing on a bone. And we're sitting there going, these dogs are kind of a lot, but they're all under control. And we're still saying this is kind of a lot of work.
And that's not even a stroke or ego, but it's just to say, like, we don't want much more. Like, as we move into our next few years, we'll be very careful about how we replace our pack and what we replace it with and what we want for our lifestyle and how much time we have to devote to sports. So know what you're getting into.
Here's a tip.
Enjoy working with your freaking dog.
If you do have a working dog, get yourself a treadmill. It's great in the rainy, heavy, inclement weather. I throw Cousteau on a treadmill quite often to take that edge off him if I've been working and haven't had a chance to do anything with him. It's a nice way to burn off.
We're dropping a lot of little seeds. We want to have Larry on the podcast, and I want to do $12 treadmill. That was my treadmill course. So we got a lot of little seeds we're dropping. Guys, have a great week. We will see you next week. We have some cool interviews coming up, and we are excited to share with you. And in the meantime,
keep it quirky.
And don't get a working dog unless you really want it and do your research.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.